Hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is the podcast by myself, Alan Smith, and Patrick Keenan, all about AI, product, and kind of the future of building stuff online. Roughly thereabouts, and using computers and things like that. Sounds about right.
It's a
It's a
pleasure to
pleasure
be
to be
here, and
here,
I
and I
think
think
our
our
MO
MO
here
here
is
is
quick
quick
shares,
shares,
chat
chat
about
about
it,
it,
and then
and then
move
move
on. We'll
on.
try
We'll
to
try to
post the
post the
links that
links
we
that we
share
share
into the
into the
chat.
chat.
So
So
without
without
further
further
ado,
ado,
um,
um,
what's the
what's the
top
top
five for
five for
this
this
week?
week?
What's on
What's
your
on your
mind,
mind,
Al?
Al?
I actually have more than five, but I have three categories, and some of them are kind of the same. So let's start with search. Let me share you some links here. The first one, so the first one we've actually talked about before in person, but not on a podcast. And I thought this was really interesting. Let me, where's it's so bad at Google Meet. Rewind.ai. Throw that up.
This
So
is a
the
consensus
concept here
app,
is,
right?
right?
yeah, so the concept is what if, and the other two links are broken, so
Got it.
don't click on them. You'll have to split them up. What if you could have somebody looking at the computer at the same time as you're looking at the computer, kind of who had a perfect memory and could search with natural language rather than, sort of more like token-based searching. Um, and so the idea is anything you've ever seen, said, or heard now is being recorded on your screen, and your own personal AI is just sort of watching it. So let's say, think of a use case, right? You were at some website and you didn't bookmark it, and you're like, what was that website with that picture of that, dog riding a unicycle or whatever it was, and the AI can find it. Or what was that email where we saved, the most recent OKRs, and it's like, oh, actually it wasn't an email, it was a Google Doc, right? Or what was where's my tax, like files, whatever. This is You have no idea what it is, but if AI could find it for you because it's seen everything on your screen, that to me is just mind blowing. It's just like kind of terrifying from a security perspective of everything you ever, have on your screen being recorded in that way, but also very, very helpful, right? Like you can imagine it. What do you think?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's
probably a
probably a
first
first
foray
foray
into an
into an
always-on
always-on
observer.
observer.
So I
So I
think we've
think we've
had
had
this
this
in
in
some
some
areas
areas
of
of
digital
digital
life,
life,
and
and
so there's
so
a
there's a
couple
couple
cool
cool
elements
elements
here.
here.
Like
Like
one is
one
the
is the
always-on
always-on
observer.
observer.
The other
The other
one
one
is
is
the
the
new
new
API is
API is
Pixel.
Pixel.
So
So
for the
for the
first
first,
one, um, you
you
have to
have to
spell
spell
check.
check.
Like,
Like,
do you
do you
remember when
remember
the
when the
red
red
line
line
came
came
out
out
in
in
spell
spell
check?
check?
Yeah,
It's like,
it was
oh
like
my
magic. It was like,
god.
oh my God, it knows that, like, I've spelled something wrong. It knows how to spell. This is amazing.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
piece of paper doesn't know how to spell. A typewriter doesn't know how to spell. The old computers didn't know how to spell.
And for the
And for the
longest
longest
time, it
time,
was
it
like
was
a
like a
word
word
feature. It
feature.
was
It
like,
was like,
whoa,
whoa,
you
you
need
need
Word to
Word
get
to
this
get this
thing.
thing.
And then they
And then they
introduced the
introduced the
blue
blue
line,
line,
which is
which
the
is the
grammar
grammar
line,
line,
right? You
right?
might
You might
want to
want to
change
change
this,
this,
don't
don't
end in
end in
a
a
proposition or
proposition or
whatever.
whatever.
Um, so
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 we are
we are
used to
used to
this
this
always-on
always-on
observer
observer
in
in
narrow
narrow
contexts.
contexts.
Another one
Another
would
one
be
would
like
be
a
like a
code
code
linter,
linter,
which
which
basically, as
basically,
you're
as you're
writing
writing
code,
code,
corrects your
corrects your
code,
code,
save, it
save, it
auto
auto
indents
indents
everything,
everything,
it
it
colorizes
colorizes
things
things
in a
in a
legible
legible
way.
way.
So these
So
are
these are
things
things
where
where
we're
we're
kind of
kind of
inputting, we're going
inputting, we're
about
going
our
about our
day,
day,
and there's
and
some
there's some
smart
smart
stuff
stuff
happening to
happening
the
to the
input.
input.
It might
It might
even be
even be
rewriting
rewriting
some of the
some of the
things
things
automatically.
automatically.
The
The
latest
latest
one
one
is
is
probably like
probably
the
like the
AI
AI
assistant
assistant
in
in
writing
writing
emails or
emails or
texts.
texts.
It could
It
be
could be
above the
above the
keyboard and
keyboard and
like
like
next
next
suggested
suggested
word,
word,
or it could
or
be
it could be
like
like
next
next
suggested
suggested
sentence,
sentence,
and you
and you
just
just
press
press
tab to
tab to
accept.
accept.
So we're
So we're
kind of
kind of
like
like
we're
we're
you
you know
gradually
gradually
making our
making
way
our way
up
up
this
this
slope
slope
of
of
being
being
comfortable
comfortable
with
with
some
some
sort of
sort of
process
process
running in the
running in the
background,
background,
observing,
observing,
highlighting,
highlighting,
and
and
in
in
some
some
cases
cases
rewriting
rewriting
what we
what we
want to
want to
say.
say.
I
I
think
think
what
what
this
this
takes to the
takes to the
next
next
level
level
is
is
it's
it's
not
not
relegated to
relegated
an
to an
app.
app.
So this is
So this is
breaking
breaking
out
out
of the
of the
app
app
paradigm.
paradigm.
So
So
like I'm
like I'm
used to
used to
Word,
Word,
looking at my
looking at my
Word
Word
because it's
because it's
Word.
Word.
Now I
Now
need
I
to
need to
get
get
used to
used to
this
this
thing,
thing,
looking
looking
at
at
everything,
everything,
and
and
kind of
kind of
being
being
able
able
to
to
make
make
suggestions,
suggestions,
or
or
just
just
retrieve, remember that time we were talking about that thing, or
what
what
was that email that I was receiving about
the
the
bike I
bike I
wanted to
wanted to
buy,
buy,
and
and
being
being
able
able
to
to
recall
recall
that.
that.
So I
So I
think
think
there
there
there is like a
like a
growing
growing
space
space
for
for
these
these
kind of
kind of
observers,
observers,
like
like
automatic
automatic
background
background
observers.
observers.
I think
I
the
think
other
the other
cool
cool
thing
thing
here
here
is
is
around the
around the
assistants
assistants
not
not
needing
needing
an
an
explicit
explicit
API.
API.
So when
So
I
when I
was
was
at
at
Google, one
Google,
of the
one of the
things we
things we
were
were
working on
working
was
on was
Lens. So I
Lens. So I
worked
worked
on
on
Keep, and it
Keep, and
was
it was
like,
like,
you look
you look
around your
around your
world,
world,
how
how
can we
can we
help you
help you
quickly
quickly
capture
capture
what's
what's
around you?
around you?
And
And
this was
this was
years
years
ago,
ago,
but
but
even
even
then,
then,
uh, there
there
was
was
play
play
with
with
the
the
OS
OS
level
level
button.
button.
Is there
Is
an
there an
OS
OS
level
level
button
button
for the
for the
assistant
assistant
that would
that would
look at
look at
whatever's on
whatever's
your
on your
screen
screen
and
and
allow you
allow
to
you to
do
do
something with
something with
that?
that?
The
The
latest
latest
manifestation of
manifestation of
that on
that on
Android
Android
is when
is
you go
when
to
you
the
go to the
multitasking
multitasking
view,
view,
it
it
actually
actually
looks at
looks
the
at the
screen
screen
and it
and it
says, hey,
says, hey,
this is
this
a
is a
link,
link,
or this
or
is
this
an
is an
image, and
image,
it
and
allows you
allows
to
you to
copy
copy
those
those
things
things
with
with
one
one
tap.
tap.
It's kind
It's
of
kind of
janky.
janky. It looks,
It's
it's
not the
not the
best
best
implementation,
implementation,
but the
but the
notion
notion
becomes,
becomes,
I
I
don't
don't
actually
actually
need
need
to
to
integrate
integrate
with your
with your
back
back
end
end
or your
or your
front
front
end.
end.
I
I
just need
just
to
need to
look at
look at
what's
what's
on your
on your
screen,
screen,
and then
and
I
then I
can
can
do
do
something with
something with
that.
that.
Yeah.
I
I
think the
think the
early
early
precursor for
precursor for
that
that
was
was
scrapers.
scrapers.
So,
So,
Airbnb
Airbnb
famously
famously
built
built
their
their
inventory by
inventory by
scraping
scraping
Craigslist,
Craigslist,
and
and
there's
there's
just so
just so
many
many
examples
examples
of
of
people
people
trying to
trying to
scrape
scrape
today,
today,
whether
whether
you're
you're
scraping
scraping
LinkedIn for
LinkedIn
your
for your
business
business
application,
application,
or you're
or you're
scraping
scraping
Reddit
Reddit
to
to
build
build
something like
something like
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Um, the
The
notion that
notion
I
that I
don't need
don't
your
need your
API, I
API, I
can
can
just
just
look at
look
your
at your
output.
output.
That
That
is
is
enabled
enabled
by the
by the
web,
web
because the
because the
way that
way
the
that the
web is
web is
made,
made,
it's
it's
through
through
standards
standards
HTML. You
HTML.
can
You can
read this
read this
stuff
stuff
programmatically,
programmatically,
but the
but the
new
new
API
API
is
is
looking at the
looking at the
pixels.
pixels.
So I
So
can
I
just
can just
run
run
a
a
browser,
browser,
or I
or I
can
can
look at
look at
you could
you,
do a
could do a
quick
quick
screenshot, and
screenshot,
I
and
can
I can
tell you
tell
what
you
the
what the
screen's
screen's
about,
about,
what your
what your
next
next
logical
logical
action
action
is.
is.
I
I
can
can
use that
use
as
that
a
as a
launching
launching
point for
point for
automation,
automation,
or I can
or I
kind
can
of
kind of
just
just
remember
remember
that and
that and
keep a
keep a
kind of
kind of
record
record
of
of
the
the
different
different
tasks you've
tasks
done
you've done
throughout your
throughout your
day.
day.
So I
So
think
I
it
think it
really
really
opens
opens
up
up
the
the
scope
scope
beyond
beyond
apps
apps
if
if
people
people
get
get
comfortable,
comfortable,
and
and
there are
there are
ways
ways
to
to
entrust
entrust
these
these
background
background
observers.
observers.
I'm not comfortable yet. I can't turn this on. I want this so bad, but I'm also just not comfortable with it. I can't do it. Like for some reason, I'm like, it's gonna like see my passwords. I don't know who this AI company is who's doing this thing. Like it feels like I'm just not that much of an early adopter, I guess. When it comes down to it. So there's that. Something you're talking about there sort of kicks into this idea that these ideas have been around for a while, right? We've always wanted, the virtual assistant who can kind of just see what you're seeing and help you out, who can kind of just be there over your shoulder, as it were. And you could say, hey, could you take care of this? Or could you help me with this? That idea, that job to be done has always been there. Now, with where the technology's gotten to, we're kind of at this new wave where all of these ideas that were previously not possible are now possible. So everybody's competing to try to build them, and that's what we're seeing, at the studio with, the investment thesis, and what investors are interested in, and the whole point of saying, hey, we could do this now because, and we can compete now because everybody's starting from a similar point, uh, or at least the incumbents have less of a foothold here at this moment. All of these ideas are just available to all of us now, in some sense anyway. So yeah, an exciting time.
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
are
are
in
in
many
many
ways
ways
started.
started.
Like you
Like you
can
can
see
see
the
the
move
move
from,
from,
let's
let's
say,
say,
app-based
app-based
software
software
to
to
web-based
web-based
software. That
software.
was
That
the
was the
whole
whole
Web
Web
2.0
2.0
thing. You
thing. You
can
can
just
just
do
do
much
much
more
more
responsive,
responsive,
lower
lower
latency
latency
stuff,
stuff,
and
and
that
that
acts more
acts
like
more
an
like an
app on the
app on the
web.
web.
That
That
there
there
was a
was a
step
step
change.
change.
You
You
saw that
saw that
same
same
step
step
change
change
from
from
Yeah.
web
web
desktop to
desktop to
mobile
mobile
apps.
apps.
And then
And
you
then you
see
see
that
that
same
same
kind of
kind of
move
move
to, I
to, I
think
think
there's like
there's like
this
this
in
in
between
between
where
where
messaging
messaging
has
has
been
been
seen
seen
as
as
doing a
doing a
lot of
lot of
stuff.
stuff.
Like I
Like I
can
can
book a
book a
restaurant, I can
restaurant, I
do
can
all
do
this
all this
stuff with
stuff with
messaging.
messaging.
And
And
then
then
I
I
think
think
there's
there's
this
this
new
new
transition,
transition.
and
And
like
like
with
with
each of
each of
these
these
technology
technology
transitions,
transitions,
there's
there's
just a
just a
big
big
opening
opening
for
for
people who
people
are
who
going
are
to
going to
do it
do it
in
in
a,
a
web
web
first
first
way, way, or a mobile first way, or a chat first way, and now it's kind of like
an
an
assistant
assistant
or
or
AI
AI
or
or
observer
observer
first
first
way.
way.
And so
And so
then,
then,
yeah,
yeah,
who
who
As
will
will
win?
win?
We don't
We
know.
don't know.
And as a product person, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I have. It's almost hard to get it through through your head how much workflow, the AI can really take over, right? Like how much you can rely on it for. Like what's the appropriate amount? Uh, to give you an example, I don't know if you've used Intercom or Drift or other, basic like chat builders in the past, for helping people with things. The amount of work you had to do before to get to a particular outcome, and then how essentially the limits of that outcome and the amount of input required to get there was so heavy. Like you had to build these deep, in-depth chat flows, and it was a lot of work in terms of thinking it all through. Like it would take days, weeks, to get a decent functional chat flow working, and that those days are gone, right? Like we don't need to do that in the same way anymore. And the result that you can give back through that same, decent chat flow, which is now better, is also higher. So, you're just freed up to do so much more stuff. And I haven't even really been able to get it through my head yet how, from a product perspective, what's even possible now. And like how much we can add in a short period of time. Like what is the new possible as far as, a team of three building a thing, right? Like what can you get done? I used to know what that was. It's like, well, now it feels like there's something else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you're
like
like
really
really
a
a
team
team
of
of
two,
two,
and one
and
of
one of
you
you
is
is
not
not
human.
human.
I
I
think
think
is
is
the
the
future.
future.
Um,
Um,
and I
and I
think I
think I
do
do
think
think
about
about
ChatGPT
ChatGPT
and
and
its
its
latest
latest
GPT-4,
GPT-4,
which
which
allows you.
allows
They
you.
did
They
a
did a
lot
lot
more
more
focus
focus
on
on
JSON
JSON
responses as
responses
well
as
as
well as
coding
coding
help.
help.
But you
But
can
you can
basically
basically
say
say
like,
like,
hey,
hey,
you can
you
get
can
it to
get
a
it to a
point where
point where
like,
like,
hey, when
hey,
I
when I
tell
tell
you
you
like,
like,
fruit, give
fruit,
me
give me
5
five
related
related
fruits,
fruits,
and then you
and then
can
you can
say
say,
now
now
respond
respond
only in
only in
JSON,
JSON,
which
which
is
is
kind of a
kind of a
format that you
format that you
can
can
consume
consume
via
via
API.
API.
Like
Like
you
you
can
can
just
just
use a
use a
website to
website to
call
call
that,
that,
and you've
and you
basically
basically
built an
built an
API
API
because
because
it's
it's
just
just
outputting
outputting
JSON
JSON
based on
based on
the
the
attributes that
attributes
you
that you
give
give
it.
it.
So you
So you
set
set
up this
up this
crazy
crazy
like
like
backend that
backend
would
that
have
would have
taken
taken, yeah,
multiple
multiple
engineers to
engineers to
build,
build,
and you
and you
just did
just
it
did it
through
through
having a
having a
conversation,
conversation,
building
building
context, and
context,
then
and then
asking
asking
for
for
certain
certain
formatted
formatted
output.
output.
It's pretty
It's pretty
nuts.
nuts.
It's absolutely glorious. Like that's science fiction-y sounding stuff, right? Like it's kind of over the top. That's amazing.
Should we
Should we
watch
watch
this
this
thing?
thing?
We can try. I don't know if the sound's gonna work. We'll see. You gotta hit the no sound guy. He's basically explaining what we talked about.
Okay.
Okay.
It's got a few different use cases in it. We don't need to watch it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go to Neva. Check this out. So, speaking of Google, there's all this discussion when Chat GPT came out. They're like, is is GPT gonna kill Google, right? Like, that was the immediate, kind of hot take. Um, however, search powered by AI is a real thing, right? There's a lot of value here. A lot of the time when you're asking Google for something, you're looking for an answer. You're not looking for a website, or you're not looking for a resource, or you're not looking for a person. You're just kind of looking for information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Google Answers came from, right? And the stripping it out of the content and away from the resource right to the front of the interface, because that's what people wanted, right? And so while a lot of people saw that as, oh, you're competing with your customers, the people you're driving traffic to, um, that's true. Also from an ads perspective, there's another one. So the idea with Neva and other searches like this, I'm just choosing to share one, but there's lots of them competing at this moment. There's even pretty decent plugins that you can just add alongside of Google, so you can have your Google search and then an AI search for the same phrase, in the same window, as a Chrome plugin. But what's cool about this is it can essentially it's Google Answers on steroids, right? It's ChatGPT in this context, and then it gives you a few search results as well. So really interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, and we're going to be using a lot more. So I'm going to set myself an experiment for the next week to try to just use AI powered search and not use Google search and see what happens. Like how's my experience of the internet change?
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
funny
funny
because I
because I
remember when
remember
this
when this
came
came
out, and
out, and
actually
actually
this
this
dude
dude
was my director when I was on Google Travel, and he left. He was head of Google Ads, and he left to do this thing. And I remember it being like, well, you're going to compete with Google. But a big part of this was the membership piece, so that you can actually pay for your search. At a company that's the size of Google, you can't introduce a new model. And if I read between the lines, I think really he's outside building a new model, and if it works, Google can acquire them. If it doesn't, they can't. Maybe they just part paths. Maybe it's just a niche market. But I think what's interesting is like the knowledge that he has about the inner workings of how search business work have enabled them, but they weren't about AI before. Like this is one of those classic things that's like, oh crap, GTP is working. Let's pivot our entire product to be about AI. I think they were always about answers, but even in I think this is where the legacy helps, because you don't know the industry, but it hinders because you have an old model, and you can see even in the step-by-step guide what to do in a car crash with a link. It's like, is that the future? Is the future that like every answer has a link? Because that's not really how the model works. Like it is not link-based. It's like an aggregate of a bunch of stuff. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves. But it's it's a different model. So that's good.
There's an interesting idea here too, in terms of if you were in a space before and you're trying to add AI to it now, right? You should theoretically have an advantage because you know the problem, you know the customer, right? And now you have a new type of solution. And so the only blinders you have are how quickly can you change your old thinking about how to solve this problem into utilizing the new technology to solve the problem, right? Mm-hmm. We think about this a lot at the Venture Studio of like, what is an entrepreneur's or founder's kind of key advantage? Why should they win in this market over somebody else who doesn't know anything in this market? Or like, why them and why here? And then the why now and the why how are kind of like the follow-on questions. But to your point, there's something really interesting there in your story about the dude whose name I can't say, unfortunately.
Sridhar. It's like Shredder. Like from Ninja Turtles.
Awesome.
That's how I remember it.
All right. Yeah. And then here's the third search product, and then we'll hand it over to you for a bit. So the third search product is very narrow, and this is really just focused on essentially academic papers. And so if we're to say one of the way that I think about this is there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. Peer-reviewed academic papers are where the research actually is, right? And so if you're looking for specific information on something and you're in this use case where you need to go, so the first search was really about you and your own personal stuff. The second one was about the internet, just generally finding things. It's sort of like day-to-day search. And then consensus.app is really about this idea of searching the right content. So making this type of content much more accessible via kind of AI-powered search, and providing answers from that data set is kind of the big idea.
Cool. Yeah, which becomes more and more of a challenge because of the hallucination problem.
Definitely an issue. I don't know how they're overcoming it. For those who are unaware, the hallucination problem is when you kind of push AI hard enough to give you an answer, it'll just keep giving you an answer, even if it's not true. Or at least we're seeing that with GPT for sure. Yeah. And a lot of other generative products.
And the answer has been kind of like science, like trust the experts. And it's like, well, how do I do that in an ad-supported search model?
So there you go.
Yeah, that's cool. All right,
I will share some links now. What are you seeing? What's cool? What did you see that's cool this week?
I will start with the longest, and this is a long essay called Compressing Hegel. And Hegel is the guy who preceded Marx and talks a lot about kind of history, like the study of history and movements through history. Like we're talking about like browser to phone to AI. So he talks about that more as like capitalism, feudalism, and that. But the argument here is that compression is part of intelligence, but so is memory. And it's an interesting conversation. And the reason I will share it is because I got a new definition from the Hacker News comments. So I actually read through the Hacker News comments more than I read the articles, but this one I read the comments and then read the article, and the comments are better. But the word I got was reification. Have you heard of that word?
Reification sounds like a non-word. That sounds like something you'd make up if you've been drinking and you're saying like, "This is total reification, man."
It's based on the German word called Verdunglichung, something like that. Reification.
It's taking you back to your Bauhaus days.
Yeah. Where's the German word reification? I don't get the German. But that's okay. Anyway, it means it's the process where you talk abstractly about something, like let's say a chair, and then it becomes real in and of itself. The notion of a chair becomes real. And I think what's most interesting about it is that then reality becomes subservient to the abstraction. So then you start showing me a thing, you're like, you're saying a chair has 3 legs, but here's a chair with four legs, and then I'm like, that's not a chair. So it's like kind of like this thing where you abstract stuff, you reify it, which means that you appreciate the definition more than the reality, and then you like use that definition to kind of like narrow your perceptions of what is real and not, because all you can think about is categories.
So that's when people fall in love with the map and the idea of like the map is not the terrain, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's
hey, it's in there.
It's in there. It's like
Hegel, my man,
Jorge Luis Borges, or however you pronounce that. Talks about the math train. So it's great from an intelligence point of view, like understanding. What do we say when we talk about intelligence? But also just I see this happening at work or projects I work on. Where it's just like people are like, oh, but we have these two things. We need to do these two things. Like, well, we actually have 3 things, and 1.5 over there. And if you look at it from this other way, it's an apple. It's like so. I think that we all do this. We all get stuck believing that reality is the set of definitions that we've composed for it.
Yeah, totally. I've been feeling the same thing. At work on a project recently, we were putting together some guides and processes on something, and they're like, well, there's this person's way of doing it and this person's way of doing it, and then there's like our way, and it's like these are all just different words describing the same thing, and they're all maps, and none of them are the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of them is the terrain, essentially,
or they are like actually 10 different things that people are doing and putting into a bucket. And then you just make a new bucket. So I don't think the point is don't make buckets. The point is like sometimes the buckets you're using are not appropriate for the things that have changed. Like we're talking about, it's like now AI. I know you had a bucket of like intake sales and like conversions and then like retention. Maybe that doesn't work the same. I don't know.
It's all models are wrong. Some are useful. It's
right. And they probably have an expiry date.
There you go.
So then this is another one, Record Labels 10x AI generated songs. So this is about Drake. Basically this AI wrote like a Drake weekend mashup about a love interest in some young other singer. I don't know. Yeah. And so this is just sort of like a thing that we looked at. Last time, unfortunately, our last conversation wasn't recorded, so I'm just reviving this one.
So, on this topic, so did you see there was a sort of follow-up to this? So it was from Grimes. I just shared the link, and she saw all of this happening, and Grimes is like, she's pretty futuristic as an artist and forward-thinking. So she says, after sort of seeing all the hubbub around this, she's like, I'll split royalties 50-50 on any successful AI-generated song using my voice. Same deal as I would with any artist that I collaborate with. Feel free to use my voice without penalty. I have no label and no legal bindings. And so she's saying, like, let's go for it. If there's 1,000 people making songs without my voice, that's 1,000, or without me being a part of it, that's 1,000 more collaborations that she could probably have. Or like, okay, 9,995, more than she could normally have, and she's getting 50% of each one of those. So you do the math on, potentially the additional value that she's able to extract from, her own voice, should this actually work. Right? Should people sort of treat it the right way, and is she able to chase down all the people who are not paying the royalties, etc. But it's a great example of artists embracing technology and artists pushing against technology, on the other side, right?
Yeah, I
I
mean, I
guess
guess
the
the
50%
50% split
split
reminds
reminds
me
me
of the
of the
recent
recent
controversies
controversies
with
with
Apple,
Apple,
like
like
Apple and
Apple
their
and their
App
App
Store.
Store.
Epic
Epic
Game
Game
Company
Company
has
has
been
been
saying that
saying
they're
that
a
they're a
monopoly,
monopoly,
trying to
trying
bring
to bring
evidence.
evidence.
Apple
Apple
saying
saying
our
our
30%
30%
of
of
all
all
apps is
apps is
justified
justified
because we're
because we're
providing a
providing a
platform, we're
platform, we're
investing in
investing in
hardware,
hardware,
we assure
assure
that the
that the
software
software
works
works
properly.
properly.
There's been
There's been
some
some
compromises,
compromises,
but
but
and
and
Apple
Apple
has
has
won
won
the
the
ability
ability
to
to
retain
retain
that
that
cut
cut
and
and
not
not
have
have
other
other
app
app
stores,
stores,
I
I
think is
think
the
is the
latest
latest
proceeding.
proceeding.
But it
But
is
it is
interesting to
interesting to
think
think
that
that
what
what
she's
she's
saying
saying
is
is
like,
like,
I
I
am a
am a
platform.
platform.
Like
Like
my
my
voice
voice
is
is
now a
now a
platform.
platform.
Like, and
Like, and you can imagine
you can
you can
imagine a
imagine a
Drake
Drake
app
app
store
store
or a
or a
Grimes app
Grimes app
store where
store
it's
where it's
like,
like,
yeah, I
yeah, I
buy
buy
into the
into the
platform and
platform
now
and now
like give
like
me
give me
like a
like a
thousand
thousand
songs I
songs
can
I can
listen
listen
to
to
with
with
this
this
voice. It
voice. It
just
just
becomes
becomes
kind of
kind
a
of
very
a very
strange
strange
thing to
thing
think
to think
about.
about.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I see it the other way as, it's like more like a service, like an instrument, like, something I can pull in as a technology and use to generate content. I
Mm-hmm.
just have to pay, for that piece of it. And it's probably distributed via some other, platform that already has a lot of users. It's just there's also like a brand name and value associated with it that I can, I'm getting, when I use that voice. It's like saying, I was thinking about this the other day of, let's say you wanted to make an app tomorrow that says, I want to hear, Snoop Dogg sing some Christmas songs. Like we could make that, right? Like that could just
Yeah.
happen. And you could get the lyrics, you could generate the music, and then you could add the sort of like cloned AI voice, and you could do it almost all on the fly, right? Like that could happen pretty quickly. Um, and so it's like, okay, well, wait, what's whose IP here? Like, what do you own? Do you own the song, or is it your voice? If I imitate your voice, am I stealing from you? If I say it to you, am I stealing from you? Like, where's the line? And I think we're finding out, like, what that line is. Obviously, like, if you're singing someone else's lyrics, you have to pay them, right? Like that's how like cover songs work, right? I can sing a Snoop song, not that I can, but I need to pay him. That's his IP. If I use his voice, if I try to sound like him on a song, but I say it's me, is that stealing? I don't know, right? Like, and so like I think there's some new lines to find out here. In the case of, it's like using someone's likeness, right? And I think that there's already a lot of, uh, I would assume there's a lot of laws around this. This isn't my expertise, but using someone's likeness is a thing, and we've seen this in Hollywood where artists like, I think it was like 5 years ago, Bruce Willis like sold or bought or protected his likeness for future usage. Did you like hear about this story? Basically, he saw the writing on the wall and said, okay, no, I'm not going to be able to make movies forever, but I kind of want to be in movies,
Mm-hmm.
forever,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of found a way to do that.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
guess
guess
it's
it's
in a
in a
smaller
smaller
way.
way.
There is
There
a
is a
service
service
where
where
it's
it's
called
called
Cameo,
Cameo,
which
which
is
is
basically
basically
people.
people.
It's their
It's their
likeness, and you
likeness,
can
and you can
hire them
hire
to
them to
say
say
happy
happy
birthday.
birthday.
My
My
wife
wife
got me a
got me a
happy
happy
birthday from
birthday from
Deanna
Deanna
Troy,
Troy,
which
which
was
was
No
very,
way.
very
very
appreciated.
appreciated.
But
Dude,
But
she's what a keeper.
but
but
imagine
imagine
that
that
they could
they could
actually
actually
be
be
themselves.
themselves.
Like,
Like,
and
and
it's
it's
funny.
funny.
We were
We were
talking about
talking
this
about this
last
last
time, but
time, but
like
like
it
it
could
could
look
look
and
and
sound
sound
perfect,
perfect,
but there
but
is
there
an
is an
authenticity
authenticity
that's
that's
missing
missing
when
when
she
she
has
has
licensed
licensed
her
her
IP to
IP to
this
this
site,
site,
but she
but she
didn't
didn't
actually
actually
say
say
it,
it,
right?
right?
But yeah, there is, and I guess it's like, what would she be willing to say in that, like that case, like, um, buy these hard drugs, I support them, right? If like she might not say that if I was like, could you say this? However,
There
There
is a
is a
really
really
big
big
overlap
overlap
between,
between,
like,
like,
people who
people
want
who
to
want
buy
to buy
hard
hard
drugs
drugs
and
and
people who
people who
like
like
Star
Star
Trek
Trek
Next
Next
Generation.
Generation.
This is like an
An
untapped
untapped
market.
market.
I'm trying to go for an example here that's really extreme in terms of, somebody wouldn't, say this, but you could get it, through technology. You could get that across. Um, so there's something there too about the authenticity component of it, of
I see what
what
you're saying.
what
Is
would
that
they
part of
endorse? But
her
exactly,
persona?
where again, where's the line, right? Like you take it to the extreme on either end, and it starts to become clear at like, how interesting this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
but I
guess if
guess
I
if I
just
just
think
think
deeper
deeper
about the
about the
product that
product that
Cameo is
Cameo is
offering,
offering,
it's
it's
that
that
a
a
celebrity
celebrity
that
that
I
I
know
know
really
really
well
well
now
now
kind of
kind of
knows
knows
me.
me.
Like I'm
Like I'm
kind of
kind of
forcing
forcing
them to
them to
watch
watch
me.
me.
I've
I've
watched
watched
them.
them.
Now I'm
Now I'm
forcing them
forcing
to
them to
watch me.
watch
So
me.
it's
So it's
actually
actually
not the
not the
output of the
output of the
video.
video.
It is
It
the
is the
fact that
fact
they
that they
spent some
spent some
time
time to
thinking
think
about
about
me.
me.
Yes, and you get a little bit of a rub there in terms of like you're kind of connected to them in some way. Whereas if I'm just connected to some technology, that doesn't really mean as much to me. So I guess if I'm paying for somebody to endorse something and it's more of a business relationship, I don't care, right? It's like, no, I just, I want whoever to, support, whatever. That doesn't give me as much of a, there's not as much of an emotional need there. It's more of a transactional one. I'm trying to buy credibility. I can buy that,
Mm-hmm.
through the AI, as opposed to, I'm trying to buy a connection, and I'm trying to, buy this like moment of like, oh, somebody I look up to, sort of like acknowledged me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is like a big part of the Cameo component.
Yes,
Yes,
and
and
then
then
that's at
that's at
odds with
odds
the
with the
AI
AI
piece
piece
because
because
the goal
goal
there
there
is to
is
not
It's
not
not the
acknowledge
same.
you.
acknowledge you.
Their AI acknowledging you doesn't have the same emotional vibe as them doing it themselves.
Cool. So
Cool. So
next one
next one
is
is
DARPA
DARPA
wants to
wants to
rethink the
rethink the
fundamentals of
fundamentals of
trust. We
trust. We
talked
talked
about
about
this a
this a
bit
bit
in the
in the
last
last
time
time
around
around
digital
digital
identity
identity
and that
and that
work of
work of
WorldCoin
WorldCoin
that
that
they're
they're
doing to
doing to
like
like
ensure
ensure
people are
people are
people.
people.
Hmm.
This is
This is
just
just
DARPA,
DARPA,
who
who
behind the
behind the
internet,
internet,
right
right
behind
behind
a
a
lot of the
lot of the
modern
modern
technology we
technology we
use
use
today,
today,
is
is
looking
looking
at
at
AI
AI
and
and
saying
saying
like
like
this is
this
a
is a
threat.
threat.
Um,
Um,
and we're
and
going to
we're going
have
to
to
have to
invest in
invest in
sort of a
sort of a
systems
systems
level
level
answer
answer
to
to
how do
how do
we
we
trust,
trust.
how
Yeah,
do we
how do we
trust in a
trust in a
world of
world of
AI?
AI?
It, when I think about it, the first thing I think is they're either like, I think about the future of where, we just realize like, what, there's no way for us to coexist. AI is going to kill us sooner or later. So we make the choice of saying we're not going to do it. Right. And isn't that Dune? Like, don't they do that in Dune? Like in Dune, AI is outlawed, and there are some people who have like some sort of chip installed where they can access AI level computing or whatever. They're trained, for it. But essentially, I think that's a concept in Dune that they said, we're just not going to do this. AI is outlawed. That was the system level trust
Hmm.
Mm.
that they found of essentially abolishment completely, rather than any tolerance, or you know we don't have to verify it because that's just not allowed anymore.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So sorry, a bit of a, again, taking it all the way to the extreme of,
Totally.
Totally.
that's one way to solve the problem.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
and I
think we're
think
at
we're at
this
this
moment where
moment where
we're
we're
using it
using
for
it for
fun
fun
things like
things
what's
like
a
what's a
recipe I
recipe I
could
could
use
use
with
with
food in my
food in my
fridge. But
fridge.
it's
But it's
like
like
these
these
guys
guys
are
are
thinking
thinking
like
like
we
we
will be
will be
putting
putting
nuclear
nuclear
arms
arms
in the
in the
possession of
possession
an
of an
AI.
AI.
Yes.
How
How
can we
can we
trust
trust
that? So
that? So
that's
that's
like the
like the
cost
cost
of
of
trust or
trust or
hallucination in
hallucination in
that
that
sense
sense
is
is
much
much
higher
higher
than
than
like I
like I
made a
made a
crappy
crappy
pie.
pie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the sort of undertone there of what you shared is, wherever you go, whatever problems you're currently trying to solve, the question is, how can we jam more AI into this to help out with the workflow and do some of the work for us? And that's what part of DARPA's job is, like, the nukes, right? They got to take care of the nukes. They're like, how can we jam AI in here, because somebody else with nukes is going to be thinking about the same thing, and now that's a problem that they need to solve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, that's kind of interesting. And so, while our problems are simple and easy, hey, I need to make a shopping list versus, oh, I need to, you know, make sure that there's a tangible counter-terrorist threat, whatever it is, in the line. So orders of magnitude difference, like orders and orders and orders of magnets, difference in the consequence of getting it wrong, right? And that's why for so long, when we used Siri, it was like, okay, I'll use Siri for timers and playing music, right? It's like next track, because the cost of failure is really low. It's like setting a timer for 5 minutes and it doesn't quite hear you. Set a timer for 5 minutes, right? You just sort of repeat it. Um, and so, yeah, the cost of failure and the job level, it seems like it's creeping up, that we're okay with trusting AI with higher and higher things. And yeah, that element of trust is here. Interesting ideas there too. That's cool, man.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
there's a
there's a
piece
piece
here,
here
which
which
is
is
they
they
could
could
have
have
infrastructure that
infrastructure
is
that is
AI
AI
based.
based.
And the
The
worst
worst
case you
case
go
you go
to
to
is
is
like,
like,
we're in
we're in
this,
this,
Cold
Cold
War
War
with
with
communist
communist
Russia and
Russia
the
and the
United
United
States,
States,
and
and
there's a
there's a
submarine that's
submarine
going to
that's going to
launch a
launch a
nuclear
nuclear
weapon,
weapon.
and who's going to
Who's
be
going
the
to be the
guy who
guy who
kind of
kind of
second
second
guesses
guesses
himself?
himself?
Should there
Should there
be an
be an
AI
AI
there?
there?
Mm.
And
And
that
that
is
is
helpful,
helpful,
but it
but it
also
also
doesn't
doesn't
reflect
reflect
the
the
actual
actual
reality
reality
today,
today,
which
which
is
is
AI
AI
doesn't
doesn't
need to
need to
be
be
in
in
the
the
end
end
consumer
consumer
program,
program,
i.e., the
i.e., the
submarine
submarine
software,
software,
for
for
AI to
AI to
be in the
be in the
stack.
stack.
And so
And
the
so the
AI
AI
may
may
actually
actually
be
be
the
the
thing
thing
that's
that's
aggregating
aggregating
global
global
reports of
reports of
outrage and
outrage and
unrest
unrest
in
in
different
different
places, and
places,
it
and it
mistakes
mistakes
like
like
a
a
new
new
chocolate
chocolate
bar
bar
for
for
like
like
violent
violent
protests,
protests,
or
or
Yeah.
it just it's
it's
somewhere
somewhere
in the
in the
stack
stack
that's
that's
leading
leading
up to
up to
that
that
intelligence.
intelligence.
Maybe in the
Maybe in the
sample
sample
set,
set,
it's
it's
wrong.
wrong.
And
And
so
so
there is
there
a
is a
piece
piece
where
where
introducing
introducing
AI
AI
in your
in your
stack
stack
can
can
lead
lead
to a
to a
really
really
quick
quick
prototyping. Like
prototyping.
you
Like you
can
can
pull it
pull it
around
around
really
really
quick,
quick,
and
and
a
a
longer
longer
term
term
support.
support,
Like you
like you
can
can
kind of
kind
like
of like
scale
scale
in a
in a
different way
different
than
way
you
than you
could
could
before.
before.
But it
But it
does
does
add a
add a
level of
level of
uncertainty,
uncertainty,
and it's
and it's
kind of an
kind of an
unknown
unknown
unknown. It's
unknown.
like a
It's like a
black
black
swan.
swan.
We
We
don't
don't
know
know
how it's
how
going
it's
to go
gonna go
wrong. We
wrong. We
just
just
know that
know
it
that it
will
will
go
go
wrong.
wrong.
Yes.
And I
And I
can't
can't
help but
help but
thinking
thinking
about
about
our
our
escape
escape
games.
games.
So we
So
have
we have
escape
escape
games.
games.
We're
We're
adding in
adding in
this
this
new
new
puzzle,
puzzle,
which has
which
like
has
three
like three
RFID
RFID
readers,
readers.
lights
Lights
go
go
on,
on,
and it's
and
going
it's
to
going to
replace this
replace this
other
other
puzzle that's
puzzle that's
just like
just
kind
like
of
kind of
locks,
locks
with
with
combo
combo
locks,
locks,
and it's
and
going
it's
to be
going to be
magical.
magical.
But
But
it
it
also
also
might
might
not
not
work.
work.
And in
And in
fact, we
fact,
can
we can
guarantee
guarantee
sometimes it
sometimes it
won't
won't
work.
work.
Our,
Yep,
our
our
tower got
tower
hit
got
by
hit by
lightning,
lightning,
as an
as an
example.
example.
It's not
It's
going
not
to
going to
work.
work.
And so
And
then
so
there's
then there's
always got
always
to
got
be
to
a
be a
manual
manual
override.
override.
So
So
like with
like
the
with the
clock and the
clock and the
music
music
example you
example you
give,
give,
AI can
AI can
help,
help,
but there's
but
a
there's a
manual
manual
override.
override.
And
And
so
so
when
when
we
we
add
add
uncertainty
uncertainty
to the
to the
stack,
stack,
we
we
actually
actually
have
have
to
to
add an
add an
equal
equal
amount of
amount of
manual
manual
overrides.
overrides.
And then
And
if
then
it's
if it's
important
important
enough, we
enough,
need
we
to
need to
add
add
training.
training.
And then
And
we're
then we're
kind of
kind of
like
like
back to
back
where
to
we
where we
were
were
with
with
some
some
shortcuts.
shortcuts.
Like now
Like now
people have
people
some
have some
keyboard
keyboard
shortcuts they
shortcuts they
can
can
use.
use.
Yeah, right. Yeah. If That's one way to look at it. It's from a product perspective, it's expensive because you need to build two paths rather than one, even if people use path number one 98% of the time, right? That there needs to be that second way of accomplishing it. You can't just have the one. Yeah, that's a interesting byproduct of that whole vibe.
I think
I
the
think the
nice
nice
thing though
thing
is
though
you
is you
can
can
get
get
to
to
whether it
whether it
works
works
much
much
faster.
faster.
Yes.
So like
So
you don't
like you
have to
don't have to
build that
build that
second
second
override until
override
you're
until you're
successful.
successful.
Like if
Like
you're
if
not
you're not
successful at
successful at
all,
all,
why
why
invest
invest
any
any
time
time
in
in
doing
doing
things
things
manually?
manually?
So that's actually a good segue into this. I want to share a couple of product links. Um, so this one is from something called Fireproof, and I don't know the whole story here. I only know the product. And so like, yeah, this will be noisy if you play it. But essentially, in starting new products and new product ideas, there's this concept called customer development. It's like 15 or 20 years old. It's from Steve Blank, and it's the idea that you might have an idea for a product, but you're probably wrong about it. No ideas kind of survive the first contact with customers, and you need to get out of the building to better understand what's actually happening in the real world. Well, now you don't, because you can simulate your customers with a, a sort of auto GPT instance. So essentially what it allows you to do is say, here is the customer segment I'm thinking of working with, and here's the idea that I'm thinking about. And you can set up two GPT instances to essentially run a bunch of customer interviews for you without actually talking to a customer, and then summarize the findings of all those interviews into a bunch of actionable product insights of saying, okay, if this is the product, we've generated these different avatars that you might sell to, and then we're going to do a bunch of discovery interviews with each one of them, and then as you start to add product details, you can sort of validate those product details against these simulated customers, as it were. And when I saw this, I was just like, oh my god, I love this so much, because interviewing customers is really hard, right? It's like such a pain. Getting like the right customers on the phone is like takes forever. And so again, this just like collapses. It's not going to be perfect. It's not a real customer. It is based on lots of data about that segment and about that customer, like all sort of large language model information is. Yes, there will be hallucinations. Yes, there will be things that don't work. I think there's also potentially a step function of productivity and speed that can be added here in a lot of contexts. So I was so excited to see this. It adds a second use case, which is super valuable, which is just summarizing. And so if you're already doing a bunch of customer interviews, you don't have to use this, but you can use you know lots of different AIs that do summaries okay, and kind of teach them what to look for. I want you to listen for jobs. I want you to listen for pains. I want you to listen for gains. I want you to listen for existing solutions. I want you to listen for stakeholders, etc. Pull out those components and then count up how many times you hear each one across these 20 interviews that I already did. That was very tedious, very challenging work to do in the past, and now we can outsource a lot of that stuff just via Otter transcripts or whatever. You just throw them straight in, and you can find insights correlated across large direct data sets and then large simulated data sets like this one. So exciting times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
does.
does.
Yeah, you
Yeah, you
kind of
kind of
automate the
automate the
customer,
customer,
which
which
is,
is
again,
again,
you
you
want to
want to
get
get
to
to
something
something
that
that
doesn't
doesn't
work as
work as
quickly as
quickly as
possible.
possible.
And it
And it
feels
feels
like,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
rather
rather
than
than
waiting for
waiting for
the phone
phone
call,
call,
like
like
do a
do a
bunch of
bunch of
these, and
these,
then
and
you'll
then you'll
just have a
just have a
much better
much better
phone
phone
call
call
with a
with a
real
real
person.
person.
And
And
I
I
love the
love the
notion that
notion
you
that you
would
would
build
build
personas
personas
that
that
are
are
people you
people you
could
could
interact
interact
with.
with,
Like
like
at,
at,
when you're
when you're
working on a
working on a
big
big
product,
product,
often you'll
often
have
you'll have
personas, and they
personas and they
act as
act
a
as a
shorthand of
shorthand of
like
like
mental
mental
models,
models,
capabilities,
capabilities,
abilities,
abilities,
goals,
goals,
motivations,
motivations,
context.
contexts.
And you
And you
talk about
talk
them
about
as
them as
personas, but
personas,
you
but you
kind of
kind of
like
like
got to
got to
know the
know the
persona. You got
persona,
to
you got to
read the
read the
documents.
documents.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
And
And
not
not
everybody
everybody
does.
does.
Most people
Most people
don't.
don't.
Definitely,
Definitely,
if you're an
if you're an
engineer, you
engineer, you
won't.
won't.
If I
If I
could, as
could,
an
as an
engineer,
engineer,
output my
output my
app,
app,
put it
put
in
it in
front of
front
a
of a
persona, and
persona,
they
and
can
they
kind
can
of
kind
like
of like
walk me
walk me
through
through
how they're
how they're
using
using
it.
it.
And that
And that
goes
goes
back to
back
like
to
the
like the
pixel
pixel
as the
as the
API that we
API
were
that we were
talking about
talking
in the
about in the
beginning. Like
beginning. Like
if
if
this
this
agent could
agent could
look at
look
this
at this
thing and
thing and
try to
try to
use it
use
and
it
tell
and tell
me
me
what's
what's
useful,
useful,
what's
what's
not,
not,
like
like
it
it
becomes a
becomes a
tighter
tighter
loop
loop
between
between
like
like
engineers
engineers
building,
building,
getting
getting
feedback,
feedback,
which is
which is
kind of
kind of
representative
representative
feedback
feedback
inside of
inside
this
of this
model,
model.
and then
And
you
then
go
you
out
go
to
out to
real
real
customers. And
customers. And
again, it's
again, it's
just
just
how
how
quickly
quickly
can
can
we
we
meet
meet
reality
reality
rather
rather
than
than
meeting
meeting
our
our
internal
internal
artificial
artificial
reality,
reality,
which
which
is
is
filled
filled
with
with
abstractions
abstractions
and
and
reification.
reification?
How can
How can
we
we
as
as
quickly
quickly
get
get
to
to
reality as
reality as
possible? How
possible?
can
How
we
can we
get
get
feedback
feedback
before we
before we
go
go
there?
there?
And
And
yeah,
yeah,
how
how
can
can
we
we
embody
embody
this?
this?
How can we
How can
make
we
this
make this
agent
agent
embody our
embody our
customer?
customer?
So
So
because we're
we're
always going
always
to
going to
represent our
represent
own
our own
perspective,
perspective.
and one
And
of the
one of
ways
the
we
ways we
get out
get
of
out
our
of our
head
head
is we
is we
just
just
role
role
play.
play.
But what
But
if
what
we
if we
don't
don't
have the
have the
ability to
ability
role
to role
play
play
and
and
ourselves and
ourselves and
somebody else
somebody
at the
else at
same
the same
time?
time?
So
So
it's
it's
cool.
cool.
Following on that, so Mixo.io, this is launch a startup in seconds with AI. I think that's overselling the promise here a little bit. The idea is if you have an idea or product or service, it'll help you build a landing page really quick. And essentially, you just put in the idea. So try it out, get started. Hit that get started button on that link. So come up with an idea. There we go. Technology. Excellent. So it's connecting to the AI. It's submitting the description. It's generating a startup name. It's designing a logo. It's collecting the site images. It's crafting testimonials, which is crazy because, like, yeah, it doesn't exist. Generating the code, optimizing SEO, configuring the site, and launching. Let's see what happens here. enhancing the mobile experience. I love their like waiting here. It's probably not actually doing these things in
definitely not doing
this
these
context, but it's just sort of like, here, look, we've got a
Look, it's
future.
us.
It's
Here's the
us.
website, a future forward. So that's the name, all right?
Okay.
A podcast about tech, design, and the future in Toronto. Explore the innovations shaping Toronto's future with our engaging podcast on tech and design. And look at Scott, Alan Partridge, who's not a real person, says that
Hello,
Alan.
Future Forward is an essential listen for anyone interested in staying on top of technology trends. And then it's got, further benefits essentially listed as you go down. It's got images added in, etc. Um, and the idea here is you can throw this up, you can you can edit it, it's your first draft essentially. And then you can drive traffic to it and get people signed up and then talk to them about what they were interested in your product idea for. So rather than
crazy.
simulating users, if you want to actually go get some now, this is a super quick way of doing that. Like if you needed to finish it before the end of this meeting or this podcast, you can do it. And set up a Google ad stack or throw it out on your Twitter or whatever it happens to be. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's nuts. What a crazy demo.
It's so fun.
It's
cool. It's really cool. And it makes a big difference that like clearly they have some templates they're working with. But to see it much closer to an end product rather than a chat box, I think it's so cool. And it's just the beginning for this kind of stuff.
Some of the magic is lost after you've done like more than one of them.
Right.
But the first time it's fun.
But you can imagine scaling this template and just if this is attractive, like having 100 templates.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, you just switch it, as you get a little bit further, you switch out the images, say less images of microphones and people hanging around and more images of robots in the city, right?
Yeah.
And that's text to image, which we have, and it could just do that for you easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going down the stack. I'll share one more, and then I've only got one freaky link left. So check this out: askpace.ai. So this is, let's say you've done your initial interviews, you've put up your landing page, you've talked to customers, and now you want to start building out the product a little bit. Pace is essentially a product management tool that allows you to do a bunch of the things. And if you scroll around on here, you'll see some of this stuff. It basically helps create specs, it helps create product roadmaps, it helps create, what do we got? User stories, project report status, vision statements for the product requirements, all the documentation that's required for product, essentially just generating more of that. So that's, as you sort of get further down the stack of building stuff, AskPace is one of the new AI first products for generating some of this stuff, as opposed to existing tools like Product Pad or whatever that kind of already have like a great workflow and are just going to add generative into it, so you can sort of fill out existing blocks within their tools. This is like, we'll just make this stuff and then you edit it. It's the different paradigm, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think the templatization of everything, and again, starting from a full page rather than blank pages, it's awesome. Cool.
All right, you got any other ones?
I guess the only other one in terms of talking about like the danger of AI, and really the future of destruction via AI. I wanted to plug this site which tracks the number of incidents of the AIs going rogue and killing all of the humans, which to date are 0. And they've also usefully been categorized by hardware, software, data, and other. You can see the graph just to build confidence there.
Yep. I'm glad that we're still at 0.
Yeah.
This is important.
So far.
For confidence.
But just check back on this website. It'll be updated.
So, there's this saying that I've been hearing going around in AI recently, which is, this is the worst it's ever going to be in terms of performance. So if we're at 0 now, it could really only go up from there. We're going to be killing way more. Like there should be much more rogue AI killing all the humans. So yeah,
that's right.
How do we get from 0 to 1? And
this is the classic product problem the AI will have to struggle with.
Okay.
Cool.
that's, you know what, I got some other stuff. Let's talk about it next time. I feel like this is it can wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Well, to all those listening,
or to that guy,
or to Tina.
Shout out Tina, Tiana Troy.
Yeah. All right. Well, good chat. Till next time.
Hey man, thanks for your time. Thanks everyone who's listening. Bye.
Bye.